The woman slammed her hand on my mailbox and shouted, "You have 30 minutes to move that truck before I get it towed." I looked at her, then at my old black pickup sitting quietly in my own driveway. My 8-year-old son Tyler was standing beside me holding a basketball, confused and scared. "Ma'am, this is my house," I said calmly. She laughed right in my face. "Not anymore if the HOA has something to say about it." That was the first moment I met Linda Carter. The woman everyone in the neighborhood whispered about, but never challenged. I had moved into the neighborhood only 3 weeks earlier. After retiring from the Army, I wanted peace. That was it. A quiet place for me and my son after losing my wife 2 years ago. But peace clearly had a problem with Linda. She wore sunglasses even though the sun was already going down, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, like she was waiting all day for someone to breathe wrong. Then she pointed at my truck again. "No commercial vehicles allowed." I almost laughed. The truck wasn't commercial. It was an old Ford with faded paint and a broken back light. Tyler quietly pulled my sleeve. "Dad, are we in trouble again?" That word again hit me harder than I expected. Before moving here, our landlord had kicked us out because Tyler made too much noise playing outside. Since then, the kid asked that question any time an adult raised their voice. Linda heard him and smiled. "Maybe if your father followed rules, you wouldn't be." I felt my jaw tighten, but I stayed calm. Because in the Army, I learned something important. The loudest person in the room usually hides the biggest lie. I took a slow breath and asked, "Can you show me the HOA rule?" She flipped through her clipboard dramatically, then pulled out a paper and shoved it into my chest. At the top, in bold letters, it said, "Final violation notice." My stomach dropped for half a second. How the hell did I already have a final notice? Then I noticed something strange. The paper had no official logo, no address, no signature, just a random Gmail address at the bottom. I looked back up at her. "This isn't official." Her smile disappeared for just a second, then came right back stronger. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "around here I am official." At that exact moment, a tow truck slowly turned into my street and stopped right in front of my house. Tyler grabbed my arm tightly, and Linda smiled like she'd been waiting for this all day. The tow truck driver stepped out slowly, chewing gum like he had done this 1,000 times before. Linda crossed her arms proudly. "That truck is violating HOA rules. Take it." I walked down the driveway before the driver could even touch my truck. "You got paperwork?" I asked him. He looked at Linda first instead of me. That told me everything. Linda quickly jumped in. "The HOA already approved it." The driver shrugged awkwardly. "Look, man, I just do the job." Tyler was still standing near the garage, clutching his basketball so tightly his fingers were shaking. "Dad, it's okay," I told him without looking away from Linda. But honestly, it wasn't okay, because something felt very wrong. The tow driver finally handed me a copy of the towing request. I looked at the paper carefully. Then I froze. The HOA name on the document didn't even match. The sign at the entrance of the neighborhood. Different spelling. Different address. "Fake!" I slowly looked back up at Linda. "You forged this?" Her face instantly turned red. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." The tow truck driver suddenly stepped back like he wanted no part of this anymore. That's when an older man across the street quietly walked over. Gray beard, Vietnam veteran hat. I had seen him once before watering his lawn. He leaned close to me and whispered, "She's been doing this for years." Linda snapped toward him immediately. "Frank, stay out of this!" But Frank ignored her. "She scared an old widow into paying thousands last year," he said quietly. Nobody ever checked if the HOA was even real. For a second, the entire street went silent. Even the tow truck driver looked confused now. I stared at Linda carefully. "Wait, are you saying this HOA isn't legal?" Linda laughed nervously, but it didn't sound confident anymore. "Of course it's legal." "Then show me registration papers." She didn't answer. "Show me the contract every homeowner signed." Still nothing. Then Frank said the sentence that changed everything. "Most of us never signed anything at all." Tyler looked up at me. "Dad, does that mean she lied?" Linda suddenly exploded. "Shut up!" The entire neighborhood heard it. Porch lights started turning on one by one. People slowly came outside. And for the first time since moving here, I realized Linda wasn't afraid of breaking rules. She was afraid of people finally asking questions. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I answered it. And the second I heard the voice on the other end, I knew Linda's problems were about to get a whole lot worse. The voice on the phone was calm. "Is this Sergeant Daniel Brooks?" I stepped farther away from everyone. "Yes. This is County Records Office. You left us a voicemail this morning asking about the Maple Creek HOA. My eyes slowly moved toward Linda. She was pretending not to listen, but her body had gone stiff. The woman on the phone continued. "Sir, there is no legally registered HOA under that name in this county. For a second, I honestly thought I heard her wrong. No HOA at all? No, sir. We checked twice." I thanked her quietly and hung up. Then I turned around and looked directly at Linda. The entire street was watching now. "You've been collecting money from people using a fake HOA. Her face went pale instantly. "That's not true!" But her voice cracked this time. Big mistake. Because the second fear shows, people stop believing power. Frank stepped forward slowly. "Linda, tell them where the money went." She pointed at him angrily. "You old idiot, mind your business." Another neighbor came out from 2 houses down, a young mother holding a baby. "Wait," she said nervously. "I gave you almost $800 last year for yard violations." Then another voice joined in. "And you fined me for my fence." Another neighbor, and my boat. Another. Suddenly everybody was talking at once. The whole street started turning against her in real time. Linda looked around like an animal trapped in a corner. Then she pointed at me. "This is your fault." I almost laughed at that. "My fault? You tried stealing my truck 10 minutes ago." Tyler moved closer beside me. I could feel him shaking less now. That's when the tow truck driver quietly spoke up. "Lady, if this HOA isn't real, then this towing order is fraud." Linda spun toward him. "You work for me." "No," he said carefully. "I work for the law." That line hit hard. You could actually feel the shift happening. Linda realized she was losing control. So she did the one thing desperate people always do. She called the police. Right in front of everyone. "This man is threatening me," she screamed into the phone. "He's harassing the neighborhood." I looked at Frank. Frank looked at me. Neither of us said a word. Because we both knew. This woman had just made the biggest mistake of her life. And the craziest part? The police officer who arrived 5 minutes later stepped out of the car, saw me standing there, and immediately called me by my first name. The officer stepped out of the patrol car, looked straight at me, and frowned. "Daniel?" Linda's confidence came back instantly. "Yes, officer. Thank God. This man has been threatening me and disturbing the neighborhood." But the officer ignored her completely and walked toward me instead. He held out his hand. "Haven't seen you since Miller Base," he said. I shook his hand once. "Been a while, Eric." Linda's face slowly dropped. "You know him?" she asked nervously. Officer Eric Turner looked at her. "Know him? Ma'am, this guy pulled 2 deputies out of a burning vehicle overseas." The entire street went silent again. Tyler looked up at me like he was hearing a story for the first time. I hated talking about my military past. I never used it for attention. But Linda had pushed things too far. Eric turned serious. "What's going on here?" Before I could answer, neighbors started talking all at once. "She's been taking money. She forged notices. She tried towing his truck." Frank handed Eric the fake HOA violation papers. Eric looked at them for maybe 3 seconds before his expression hardened. "These documents are fake." Linda instantly panicked. "No, they're not. I run this HOA." Eric looked her dead in the eye. "There is no HOA here." That sentence hit the neighborhood like a bomb. One woman actually covered her mouth in shock. Another man pulled out his phone immediately, probably checking old payments. Linda started backing away slowly. "You people don't understand. I was helping property values?" "No," Frank said quietly. "You were robbing your neighbors." Then Tyler suddenly spoke. His small voice cut through everybody. "You scared people on purpose." Nobody said a word after that. Because the kid was right. Eric called for backup. And that's when things got even crazier. One of the new officers walked over holding a folder from Linda's SUV. You need to see this." Inside were dozens of fake violation notices, cash envelopes, and handwritten lists of neighbors with amounts beside their names. Over $40,000. The whole neighborhood exploded with anger. One man shouted, "She took money from my mother." Another yelled, "I knew something felt wrong." Linda looked around desperately, but nobody was on her side anymore. Then she pointed at me one last time. "This is because of you." I stared at her calmly. "No," I said. "This happened because you thought nobody would fight back." Eric placed handcuffs on her wrists right there in the middle of the street. And for the first time since I moved into that neighborhood, everything felt quiet. No yelling. No fake power, no fear. Just silence. As the police car pulled away, Tyler looked up at me and asked softly, "So, we're not getting kicked out?" I knelt beside him and smiled. "Nobody," I said. "Nobody can take your home when the truth is on your side." A few days later, neighbors gathered outside my house for a cookout. Frank brought old speakers. Kids played basketball in the street. People who barely spoke before were suddenly acting like family. Turns out fear had kept everyone separated. And once Linda was gone, the neighborhood finally became real. That night, Frank handed me a cold soda and laughed. "You know," he said, "you were the worst person she could have picked a fight with." I smiled a little. "No," I replied while watching Tyler laugh with the other kids. "She picked the wrong neighborhood to lie to." And honestly, that fake HOA did something nobody expected. It accidentally brought the whole community together.